Right, hi everybody, and welcome back to part three of this series of interviews with the lovely Judith Collins about love and companionship, what she's learnt about the power of love and companionship in people's lives through her amazing aura reading skills that she has. And hopefully you've watched the other videos. If not, jump back to it and watch those. And so we've got a list of questions that we're working through, and we're just going to get straight in and find out what Judith's got to share about these. So one of the questions here was, are auras gendered?
Auras are a bigender,
Okay.
and by that I mean that you can have females who might become a mechanic,
Right.
might become an engineer, and it shows that they've got a tendency that way. And you've got men who will go into art or go into fashion design, and they're tending that way. But it doesn't define that you are a man and you are a woman.
Okay.
Yes. It just defines that you have feminine and masculine tendencies.
Okay.
Mm. My first job, my parents had to straighten me out thinking that I was going to just do men's jobs, because my first job when I left school was working on trucks, climbing up the trucks, checking all the engines, pumping up the tires, doing the oil changes. That was my first job. And
Yeah.
my parents said to me, girls can't do that. That's not a girl's job. Mind you, that was back in the 60s when girls had to do what girls had to do and men had to do what they had to do.
Okay.
But yeah.
And so there's a really juicy question here that my partner Catherine came up with that I'm minded to ask at the start of the interview. So because I think it will inform the rest of the interview. So does the aura develop over lifetime? Is the development linear, or can it happen consecutively in different areas at the same time? I don't know if that makes sense to you, that question, or
Yeah. That question's a very interesting one. On my website, I've got a post on pregnancy and the baby coming in. The baby's aura forms when it's conceived, but it bonds to the mother's aura for security and protection. When the baby is born, that aura releases, and from the moment the baby takes its first breath, it starts to develop the aura. And so the aura starts with the experience of light, first seeing light, hearing clearly, right? Hearing clearly, or babies do hear in the womb, but hearing clearly, touch, feeling. So auras develop through thinking, feeling, hearing. Isn't that lovely?
yes,
So
indeed.
that's how their aura begins to develop, and then
And,
it develops over time as the thinking, feeling, hearing, and I forgot to mention the most important thing: seeing.
yeah,
Seeing,
yeah, yeah.
yes. So for anybody who is blind, that doesn't mean to say they can't see. They see through hearing and feeling. All right? Yeah.
And so is it a linear process, or can different areas of development happen in different areas of the aura at the same time consecutively?
No, it happens, the development happens consecutively at the same time. Mm,
Okay. All
yes.
right. Okay.
And
And
that way the aura keeps a balance. Mm,
okay. Right.
yeah.
And so I'm curious about this thing. I think we touched upon this in another video. So say for example, somebody's born as a man and at conception that we're created a man,
Mhm,
then
mhm, mhm.
lives a life as a man, and then decides halfway through life, I want to live as a woman. Um, uh, does that then, if their aura's developed over time on a journey, and then they make some sort of conscious-minded decision that they want to change that, what impact does that have on their kind of aura? That's something I'm kind of curious about, because there's quite a lot
Well,
more of that around in the world nowadays, isn't there? That kind of
that's right. And of course, President Trump is trying to get all the transgender people taken out of the armed forces at the moment, which is wrong because they have equal strength and equal value,
Mm,
and prove their worth. Just because they have this development doesn't mean to say that they're abnormal in any way. In the aura, you do see patterns in the aura, but the aura's got nothing to do with it.
Okay.
The aura is, as I said, it's what you see, what you feel, what you hear, and so on. So that's how it develops. The eternal mind, however, has a lot to do with it.
Right.
And the eternal mind is what you come in with and what you leave with. So the eternal mind, if you go to a clairvoyant and they do a reading, or you go to a course, you do a past life regression, it's the eternal mind that is the vehicle that can take you into past lives. It can take you astral traveling. It's the higher self, as we all know. It's a
Right.
higher level of consciousness.
Right.
And so it has all the memory.
Would you
The
call, is that
With the
when I would,
transvestite, yeah, with the transgender people, right? That's all part of a soul's learning, and I highly respect them because they're in touch with themselves. They're very much in touch with themselves. Their soul has got them on a journey of balancing out both female and male, which is something that a soul will do. And the soul doesn't have to take you through a trans journey. It can take you through a journey where you might be a alpha male working in fashion. Do
yeah,
you see what I mean?
you
It
sure.
can take you on all different journeys where you cross paths with the feminine and the masculine. But transgender people, as far as I see in auras, and I've done lots of them,
Right.
their soul is 100% got them in touch with themselves
Yeah.
so that they can go through that path, so long as they haven't got any sort of hang-ups with it. If they are self-assured with it,
Hmm.
then those people, and they've built a career as well, those people are very much in touch with their soul alignment and their learning. Does
Okay.
that help you understand it?
It partly does. It raises another couple of questions, if that's okay. The
Mm.
first question was, you talked about eternal mind. I feel that I'm connected to divine source, sort of energy, and that I have a strong connection with that now. Would you say it's the same thing with that divine
Yes.
source as the eternal mind?
It's known by lots of different things.
Okay. Yeah, I thought.
It's a bit like the word God.
Yeah.
God is known by many, 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 many cultures, but they don't call it God, right? And the eternal mind, I call it the eternal mind because in the human aura, it is eternal. It sits in the upper layer, just on the edge of the astral aura.
Hmm.
And so it can act as a portal to connect spirit guides. It
Hmm.
can act. It's the thing that connects you to trans channeling,
Yeah.
astral traveling.
Hmm.
Without it, you've got no connection. But everybody's got the connection.
Yeah.
Everybody's got the connection.
Okay. So the other question that had popped up in my head, because one of the other interviews we were talking about the importance of self-love. So sometimes I'm concerned for people who do want to change gender because I look at it with a self-love kind of perspective, that they were born into a divine body via a divine act of male and female union. And so to my mind, because I see things out in the broader world, whether through film, television, whatever, when you talked about seeing and hearing can influence people to have certain belief programs that they feel that they can actually live like a woman when they're a man. And whilst I
Yes.
acknowledge, yes, there's a brave decision there, I also worry for that people are they're not self-loving and looking at themselves and accepting the body that they've been born into. I grew up as a young man playing football, encountering highly testosterone alpha male energy. And then at a particular point in time, I thought, this is not for me. I don't like this kind of culture because I'm a more sensitive kind of man. But
Yeah.
I think from a self-love point of view, I sometimes worry. I mean, I've even encountered hearing about young children now who've openly said from programming that they've received on the internet, from phones, televisions, that they think they can live like a cat. They can ask people to call them a cat. They're not a boy, they're not a girl, they're not changing gender. They want people, and so there's all sorts of things out there that concern me that people are seeing. seeing and hearing that are affecting their thought patterns that
Yeah.
might not be connected with what you're saying about that deeper spiritual knowing of this is how I want to live my life, which you're in admiration of, and I could be in admiration of. So I'm concerned sometimes that people aren't looking at the inner, deep down self-love piece of, my mum and dad created me in an act of union.
Mhm.
Um, if I don't continue to live
Mhm.
in that, then the family tree possibly ends with me as well. So I just
Yeah.
wonder what you thought of some of those sort of questions.
Well, first of all, when you look at an aura and studying an aura and analyzing an aura, transgender, right, has the same kind of patterns and images as autism.
Okay.
As you know, autism has many, many, many broad forms of it, right?
Yeah.
And I have a nephew who's now in his 30s who has Asperger's syndrome. And my niece had me look at his aura when he was 3 years old to study it, to find out what the issue was, right? And so she was able to take him and get him tested for autism.
Okay.
Anyway, transgender people have the same type of patterns. Now, I'm not saying for one thing that that is autism, but it's very strange to me, and I don't fully understand it. It's very strange to me that they have identical patterns as autism.
Okay.
Identical. Yeah. So is it the higher intelligence looking at what they should do and how they should be? I don't know.
Okay.
But I know a lot of trans people, and most of them are highly successful, highly driven. They believe within themselves that they have something more to give and something more to prove, which is more importantly, simply because they've got to prove that just because I'm a man that's turned into a woman doesn't mean to say I can't be successful. Just because I'm a woman turned into a man doesn't mean to say I can't be successful. So they tend to, those who have self-worth, they tend to excel more than a man or a woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. And what do you think about that point I was making about, what I perceived as a potential kind of, if they maybe are acting out of a lack of self-love piece where they're rejecting the body that they were, divinely kind of created into, and potentially there's a rejection of self piece
Yeah.
rather than an
Yes, yes.
acceptance of. What do you think about that point?
Well, there's a lot of things regarding and in relation to the question you're asking, is that a lot of people don't parent these days. They just feed and clothe their children and rear their children, but they don't parent.
Hmm.
Um, Children get babysat with telephones and babysat with television systems and all of that. So young children, and looking at self-love, self-love brings about attention-seeking behavior, and that's basically what it is. Children don't grasp the understanding of, cats, dogs, snakes, whatever. And that leads me to something else. The human aura says that, we do not, and I know there's a great belief out there in the New Age world that we incarnate as a cat or a dog or a whatever, but according to the human aura, we don't. We don't. Yes, we don't. And so, as far as them saying that they're going to be a cat or a dog, call me cat. That's in the hands of a psychologist. Put it that way. It's in the hands of a psychologist, because it's not showing that the child is screwed up, but it shows that the parents of that child hasn't sat them down and straightened them out.
And
Yes.
it might also evidence that they're sat looking at these harmful mobile phones with the harmful content, and they're saying everything on the
Oh,
phone is true. I think that
children,
that's happening.
children.
Yeah.
I've got on my website. I've got a whole thing on how technology affects the human aura, and it's shocking. Children under the age of 16 should not be exposed to the range of technology for which they are exposed now, because they have not developed a range of understanding, balance, comprehension.
Yeah.
No.
And I think there's lots of movies out there. When my children were growing up, we didn't encourage them to watch that much television, and I can really notice the difference in them as adults now. And I think there was a period in time when there was really big, successful, addictive movies for families that had lots of programming in them that was subtle, that the parents liked the movies, so they took the kids, and then there's all these messages being absorbed by these hyper attentive children. And so I think that's a factor as well. If you can keep your children away from those kind of things, then you're really gifting them with something for the future.
Well, I'll tell you something that we did in rearing children. First thing, learning to read was learning to read is feeding your mind, and you have to look at what you want to learn and how you feed your mind. We feed our body through our mouth. We feed our mind from watching, listening, and reading, and so on. So they learnt that, and we used to set a little task of what did you feed your mind today, and they would come up with, and there had to be an experience at school or something they read. How was your mind fed today? And we did that sitting at the dinner table, saying, well, my mind got fed this today. And somebody'd say, well, my mind got fed this today. And we used it as a game. The other thing we used to do, teach the consequence of something. So when they were very little, I used to tell them a story about an elephant. And an elephant returns to the place it was born, can live for 100 years, but it turns to the place that it's born. And so I teach them how elephants don't forget, and then that becomes, as they get older, that becomes a discipline. So for instance, my theory is that parents can be in a lovely mood. They get out of bed, they want to do this and want to do that, and then the children do something and they upset their mood, and it sets them back for the whole day, right? Well, I didn't play that game. I played the game of consequence. So the kids would do something, and I would look at it and say, oh dear, what does an elephant do? And they'd look at me and go, oh, an elephant never forgets. So on the weekend, they'd come and say, hey, Mum, I've been invited to such and such. And I'd simply say to them, what does an elephant do? And they'd go, elephant never forgets. But they learned the consequence, and we didn't have to go into screaming matches or anything like that. And you sail through your life. But in life, the most important thing that children have to learn is there's a consequence to everything you do.
Yeah.
Good and bad.
That's really powerful, that message, and it's lovely to hear how you had that little nugget of just a simplicity that a child's mind can remember. And yeah, that's fantastic.
You want I'll tell you about tough love. Imagine 3 teenage girls all sharing one room, right? All sharing one room. And every time we go out, the girls are yakking in there. So I go in, are you dressed? They're not dressed, right? So I decided that enough is enough, and I don't want to nag, and I don't want to do anything. And I'm a very handy woman. I can build everything. So I went out to the shed and I came back with a screwdriver. Paul said to me, what are you doing with the screwdriver? I said, watch and see. I said to him, stand guard on the bathroom door. He said, why? I said, just stand guard and don't let anybody in the bathroom. So I went into the bedroom and I took the door off the hinges, and I said, now you'll get dressed very quickly. And so they got dressed very, very quickly because we were going out, and the door was off. I left the door off for 3 days, so they got the message. And Paul was guarding the bathroom door so they wouldn't go into the bathroom to get dressed.
Right.
Anyway, about 2 months later, we did this go slow, giggle, laugh bit as well. And so I just walked into the room with the screwdriver and just waved it like that.
Lovely. I like your style. Yeah, fantastic.
I
Ah,
don't believe that parents should upset their own moods because children do things, because the parents wear the consequence of it
yeah,
and the children wear the consequence of it. And
yeah.
I don't think that's fair.
Yeah,
Mm,
there's a strange phenomenon in the more recent decades of children parents being so oversensitive to their children's needs that they let those take over and they become disempowered themselves rather than having a bit of a vision of no or strategies like you're saying about teaching lessons. And it
mm,
seems to be a more prominent thing. And I think it really disempowers those children because it's not showing leadership, it's not showing vision, it's not showing core values like you've been talking about. And it
mm,
certainly had an impact. And sometimes, I see or encounter people who are talking about family problems, and I was thinking, well, how did you get here? You must have logically uh, not dealt with this throughout the whole process, and now there's this mountain
uh,
of chaos
yeah,
that you're trying to deal with, and it's all because you're afraid to say no, you're afraid to upset. It's
mm,
quite all right in my mind. I remember, when my children were growing up, and I even remember when I was growing up, getting upset. And I remember being sent to my bedroom when I was a teenager, going, "You're out of order. Get to your room. Go upstairs and think about it." And I was cussing my parents up in my mind, thinking,
yeah,
but at the same time, it was also dropping in. I'm pushing a boundary, and it's good to get a boundary, and I respect and appreciate that. So I did drop in as a learning. And so I think I tried to do that when I was parenting my own children. I wasn't afraid of an uncomfortable conversation. And it's really lovely to hear that what you're sharing there.
you have
Um,
to rear children.
hmm,
Parents need to have a creative mind.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You've got to find a creative mind. I went down to my eldest daughter's. We were going out for her son's 5th birthday. The 3-year-old wouldn't get dressed and she was refusing to get dressed. So I said to her, I said, well, you can't come out. She wanted to stay in her clothes, her house clothes. And I said to her, well, you can't come out making a noise. And she said, why? And I said, because you wake up all the fairies. When you wake up the fairies, I said, they become visible. And she said, visible? I said, yes. And I said, and if they stay visible, all the cats and the dogs that wander around the yards at night will eat them. And I said, so I said, we have to go out very quietly. So she quickly got dressed and she held my hand and out we went. And I said, shh, don't wake up the fairies. Remember, if the pussy cats and the puppy dogs can see them, they'll eat them. So we have to be very, very quiet. So we got all the way to the top of the driveway and we got in the car and I said, did you see the fairies? And she said, no. I said, that's good. We didn't wake them up.
Brilliant.
You've
Lovely.
got to have a creative mind.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and parenting can be challenging for sure. It can bring up things.
Oh,
Nobody gives you a manual of how to do things, and you do make mistakes, and you have to let go of those kind of things.
that's right. You do.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So that is absolutely fantastic richness there. I truly value that, and I'm sure many other people will do so as well. So one of the next questions, this is a slight diversion, I think, but we'll come back and we'll flow. So one of the next things that you said was senior love. You've got just
Yeah.
and it would be interesting to explore that.
Yeah. Senior love. Senior love is in two parts. People who don't meet a partner until they're in their 60s or 70s, and then they find a partner. They come with different values and different expectations, so their love has different colours in it. Their aura has colours that allow to support. They're both aware of they're getting older. They've both got health issues by that time. And then there's another kind of love, and that is that she's been married and he's been married, and they've got a grown-up family. Their partners have died, and they come together. And they come together in friendship and companionship, not the love falling in love with each other. It's bonding in love, which is long lasting And it brings with it immediately, it brings with it something that falling in love with someone doesn't bring, and that is respect. Because over the years as seniors, they've earned that. They know to respect the person, and they've lived in relationships that were happy, successful. And so they bring to that respect of the other person's opinions, personal space, likes, dislikes, and they're willing to open and go that path. Yes. So you see in seniors love relationships, you see patterns of self-sacrifice. So the question is that why would they have self-sacrifice in their auras? And then you find out what it is. It means that they're prepared to put their own needs aside at the time that somebody else wants to do something. So if somebody wanted to go and watch the cricket on the television all afternoon, she then makes that little sacrifice not to call on his time, but to go and do something else. So it comes out under the umbrella of tolerance. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it is a beautiful thing to see.
Sure, yeah, and it all really makes sense in the way that you've described it. If sure, yeah, definitely. There's certain dimensions there that are unique to that time and phase of life,
Yes,
I think. Yeah.
it is.
And then there's the next question that you'd suggested was the topic of gay love.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Well, as you know, I've said in the previous video that I've done a post on sexual predators, and that's a big part of the gay field of love. And a lot of sort of timid, quiet, gay people, men, let's just say men for a start, men who go into that gay area, they try to find the love that they're looking for, and a lot of them suffer the alpha dominant male, the predator that goes just different sexual partners all the time, and they suffer some minor violence as well.
Okay.
And the general populace is not aware of that. I'll give an example, a lovely example is a fellow by the name of Carl. I can use his name. I have permission. I've written an article on him. He came to me when he was 19 years old. He's gay, went into the gay community, came out of the gay community at the age of 24, came back to see me and said, I'm never going to go into a relationship. I'm not going to have love in my life. It's over. I just can't tolerate the attitudes anymore. And I said to him, I said, what kind of work do you do? And he explained to me that he could do his job anywhere. And I said, well, why don't you move to a regional country town? And I said, because they don't have the city or the urban attitudes. Well, he did. And he married he did, and he fell in love with a lovely, lovely young man who I've met. Same age, very strong boy, very strong, grown up on a farm. When they met, Carl's family his partner's family just welcomed Carl. It was part of the furniture. And then they married, and Paul and I went to their wedding.
Oh,
Yes.
how lovely. How
Yeah.
nice.
So gay marriage that is based on friendship and companionship, mainly companionship. That means that they build a bond of sharing each other's interests and supporting each other's needs. That's companionship. Those that build it on that, they have long loves. Like that's a lifetime of love.
Yeah.
But most of the gay community don't have that. They have emotional upsets, highly sensitive colors that make them emotional. And from the quiet, tender, loving gay people that I have known, they have left the gay community because of this alpha male, 3 partners in a night, that type of thing. Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
And when you get to the women, the lesbians, right, they have different auras altogether than the gay men.
wow.
The lesbian women are looking and searching, but because their auras have all this inferiority, and they have poor self-esteem, even when they think they don't, right? But they do.
Right. Okay.
And those areas in there means that their relationships only last 3 to 5 years, because there's too many emotions flying around in those auras for them to be able to combat it. There's not enough friendship and companionship. But I have written about, with the sexual predators, I've written on the post about 2 girls who were born of porn stars and
Okay.
how they ran away from their parents, and they formed a relationship, and it was a lesbian relationship that they formed for fear of not wanting men in their life, because one of the girls was raped by a porn star on a 16th birthday at 7 o'clock in the morning on a 16th birthday in the kitchen. Parents didn't worry about it because, oh well, now you're a woman. That's what a mother said. But anyway, so they packed up and they left that very day, these 2 girls. So they had companionship, and they had different colors because they clung to each other for security. And
Okay.
so I've known them for
We've got less than 1 minute left before the recording
yeah,
ends. Let you know.
yes, well anyway, so I've known them for 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to cut you short, but I want to press stop, and then we might have to continue just to. Is that okay with you?
Yep, that's it.
Lovely. I'll see you in 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.